This week on Bruh Meets World.
And I thought Maitland Ward was terrific. I enjoyed writing for her. She is a beautiful, attractive woman, but she wasn't allowed the boundaries of other women. And I felt terrible about that. She didn't get the same respect as Angela or Topanga. And I thought that was interesting when I went back and watched it. I don't know how I felt about it 20 years ago, but watching it now, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, even Shawn doesn't realize, deep Shawn journaling, poetic Shawn didn't think that was a bad thing. Like, no, we're just two entitled guys. Our girlfriends live here. We can do anything, and you're just the hot girl, so you have no rights whatsoever. And I didn't like that at all.
When this boy meets world.
What up, Buzz? What up, Buzz? And welcome to Bruh Meets World. For this Bruh Meets World, your Boy Meets World fan cast. I'm Ceej. That's
I'm Tony Curtis.
Tony Tone. Today, you guys, we have a very special episode. If you've been listening to us over the last few weeks, we did war, then we did peace, and we had great conversations. But we have an even better conversation for you guys today, because today we have a very special guest. We are talking to Allison M. Gibson, the writer of War, one of the head female writers in the writer's room. I am so excited to share this conversation with you guys because she is fantastic. I just want to say that right off the bat.
She's so great. And, as you listen to this interview, you're going to hear us just kind of squealing about how much she kind of validates all these opinions that we had throughout the show. And not just War, but all of the other episodes that she's written for Boy Meets World we get into. And we kind of talk about how she was this driving force for advocating for women and advocating for kind of more conflict within the story. So such a great interview.
Such a great interview. But also I want to say, like, as you were saying, one thing that I'm learning, Allison says it in our interview when we discussed it with her, but how much of a collaboration being in a writer's room is. And it really is, to me, a great conversation, because I feel so often when we talk about art, we talk about art from the perspective of a single individual has done great things. Like this one person is responsible for doing great art, and that's the only quote unquote true artist. But how much of work is a collaborative thing, I think doesn't get enough credit. And I do want to just like acknowledge that I love that the number of Boy Meets World writers that we've spoken to are all so quick to be like, yo, I did this, I was the voice of this, but my own writing, my own perspective would be nothing without the collaborators that I was able to work with.
Yeah, they always give their flowers to the people around them. And, honestly, like when you're watching a TV show, it's kind of like listening to a chorus. Like there's 100 people that work on the show. So you're hearing all the voices. You're not just hearing one. And it feels like one singular voice, that just means it's a really good choir. That they were able to blend it into that one vision.
Exactly. Like there are no Justin Timberlakes trying to take over.
No. I mean, even Michael Jacobs, whose voice is so strong throughout Boy Meets World, is, as we get into with our interview with Allison, like it's the writers that he chooses, it's the performers, it's everyone kind of contributing to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, but before we get into our interview, of course, we're going to do a little bit of the housekeeping. You guys, we want to make sure that you are reaching out to us some more, because you guys have been very vocal on our YouTube. We appreciate it. You can go and subscribe, YouTube /Bruh Meets World podcast. That is us. You can also check out our socials at Bruh Meets World, or you can write us at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. Either way, we appreciate you guys subscribing. We appreciate you guys rating, and we appreciate you guys giving us your feedback. And if you haven't already, make sure that you go over to our Patreon, where we have an extended version of this episode, as well as some more behind the scenes Pod Meets World react conversations. So we know that you guys enjoy those, and we enjoy doing them.
Question, do we have merch available?
I do believe we have merch.
Oh,
we have merch.
Just in time for summer.
Just in time for summer. Go over to our merch shop and make sure that you are repping Bruh Meets World, just like we hope you are. And you know what you want more than anything? You want to get that Bruh Meets World merch right before we get into our season 4 recap with the pod. Yep, that's coming up. It's on the cow. So look forward to that. And when you listen to our Bruh Meets World Pod Meets World episode for season 4, you be repping them colors.
Rep the colors like it's a gang.
All right, you guys. Now that we've done that, we're gonna head over to our conversation with Allison M. Gibson. Joining us today is a writer with a long career in television. She has served as a writer-producer for shows like Home Improvement, Two Guys and a Girl, Living with Fran, Awkward. She created the show REBA, which ran for 6 seasons on the WB. You may know her best for her work on seasons 6 and 7 on Boy Meets World, with episodes including Cutting the Cord, The Truth About Honesty, You Light Up My Union, and The War. Please welcome to the show, Allison M. Gibson.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, thank you guys. Glad to be here.
We are so excited. As you said, I met you for the first time at the Radford protests, the WA strike, which just celebrated its 1-year anniversary.
Yeah, glad to have that 1 year in the rearview mirror. That was a rough time, and Hollywood is still coming out of it. But it was a great reunion. I thought the fact that I was in the previous strike, and the fact that they set up so many reunion pickets to get people to picket line and turn it into a fun thing was a really smart idea.
Absolutely.
I saw people from Boy Meets World I hadn't seen in gosh, decades. So it was a great time.
Yeah, it worked out for us as well. We were able to meet so many of you and like get to see writers who we like didn't even recognize had such a strong role. And ever since, we've been really honored and blessed to have these conversations, kind of like do deep dives behind the scenes of like the process and what the writers' room was like.
And I had just heard about you guys right before then, because I had heard you on the Pod Meets World
That's
podcast.
right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, I was just gonna say, we're so happy to have you on. Do you mind if we start with a quick like lightning round of questions, a series that we call At the Fence?
Go for it.
Okay, so Topanga, should she have gone to Yale? Yes or no?
Well, okay. Is Allison M. Gibson answering?
Yes.
Or is a producer in the room of Boy Meets World answering?
I want both answers now.
Yep. Hell to the yes, she should have gone to Yale. Yes, but you know, television is not real. Comedy series put people in unreal situations. I think we always romanticize young love, and it's perfect love and it lasts forever. And so, was that the right story for Boy Meets World? Maybe so. But was that a tough one? Yeah. And I just rewatched some of my episodes, and it did come out in a little bit of a passive aggressive, well, maybe I should have gone to Yale, and maybe that's the way it is addressed in certain things, when people make choices and then, throw it back later. No, I didn't mean it, but it did come out. So I think that was I don't remember a lot about it, but I know it was discussed in the writer's room.
Love it.
Good to know. Are you a fan of the side yard or backyard theory for the Matthews home?
Have heard the debate, have no idea, no opinion.
Love it.
Never stressed myself on things like that. Bigger fish to fry, as I would say.
Of course. Okay, here's one that you'll probably have a little bit more of a say in. Are you more of a fan of Eric and Jack or Eric and Rachel?
Oh, I'm a fan of all three.
I knew you were going to say that. Based on your track record with like Awkward and Two Guys and a Girl in a Pizza Shop, I felt like your answer would be all three. We are definitely going to come back to that, but yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's for sure. I like all three, and I like them together.
And from a writing standpoint, are you team Cory and Topanga or team Cory and Shawn?
Gosh, that's an all three question too by the end of the series. I guess I'm team Cory and Topanga for the evolution of the show, and I guess I want some individuation for Shawn and his journey. So I guess that's my answer. That's a tough one too.
I love this. Like, just based on your answers alone and the work that you've done, like when I looked back at our coverage of the episodes that you did, which were in season 6, Truth About Honesty and Cutting the Cord, and season 7 is You Light Up My Union and The War. You have a really good job of writing well-rounded characters and kind of taking into consideration everything we've known about these characters so far. And I just wonder, like,
Hmm.
what is your process with that? Was that intentional, or is that something that's just how you approach writing?
That's interesting. I appreciate that compliment. I do like to, I like conflict.
Mhm.
I can't say that I knew the character's history from the very beginning. And I think when people take jobs now, they have we have access to any episode we want, any script we want. You can sit and download it. You can binge it all night long, 4 seasons, and show up for a meeting. Back in the day, I was sent three VHS tapes of the end of season 5, and I watched them and went in. And I remember talking a lot about the Lakers and basketball in a room with 4 men I was interviewing with. And I speak fluent sports. I'm from Texas. I can hang with the boys. And that was the bulk of what I remember the interview was really focused on. Um, so when I went back and listened to some of the Pod Meets World broadcasts, I learned some things about the characters and some of Topanga's hippie, I don't know, new agey sort of background that I didn't know about. So I was coming from what I had seen, and I did like to look at the issues. I like conflict. I like to find real things that people fight about. Um, you know, whether I was stunned that a man would care whether you used a razor on your legs or not. Like I didn't think that was that big of a big deal. It's a huge deal. I don't care about sharing toothbrush. I do that all the time, but so I like to find little things like that. And I like to find, people that seem like we're all getting along great, but there's still issues there and they pop out from time to time. And how much truth can a friendship really handle? And is
Mm.
that really something, where are all the boundaries? I think that's an area I like to explore is what are the boundaries? And we kind of step up to them. And I don't know, in season 7, maybe I don't know if we step up to them or we just run over them. But I guess that's part of a season 7 and late seasons and shows.
It's so funny you say that you're interested in conflicts because I feel like that's the thing that me and Ceej really love about your episodes. When we think about like the truth about honesty and war, they kind of both have this similar theme about like truth bubbling to the surface, friends kind of like sharing more about how they feel about each other than they do in a typical episode. And we kind of are living for those moments. We want the conflict because there's so many times where we're watching these episodes where it's like, hey, like this character slighted this character in a way they're not really addressing. But it feels like in your episode, especially with War that we just reviewed, all of that comes to the surface in such a great way.
I mean, comedy it's fun to have jokes, but when you can put some character and real conflict behind it, I think it just elevates it. And that's what I like writing the most is just, you know, people getting in there and the dark, the nitty gritty and the complicatedness of relationships. And so, I mean, that's always territory I like to play with. And I usually, at least and scripts evolve with staff input. So it's never totally your own, but I do generally, um, I like to just start from something grounded, something real, something in my own life or someone else's life that was in the room that we pitched. So there's like that nugget of truth in it. And then, as comedy and because it's storytelling, it can grow and get bigger and bigger. But there's a nugget there that's truth that I hope people watching go, yeah, wait a minute, and yeah. So that's generally behind whatever I'm doing. I try to find something that we can hang on to that's truthful.
Speaking of pulling from truth, I was saying that you were pregnant in season 6, and so is Amy. And I don't know if like Amy's pregnancy was like directly inspired by you being pregnant at the time, but in the Cutting the Cord episode, there is a lot of discussion about Alan's midlife crisis and what it means to have children. And we were just wondering, like, again, was that pulled from like your real life experiences, like the birthing classes and all of that, or again, how did that come about?
Well, first off, there must have been something in the water because there was a lot of pregnancy in season 6. So not only was Amy pregnant, but I was pregnant, Patty Carr was pregnant, and then Barry Safchek's wife was pregnant. So we had just babies everywhere and a lot on the brain around then. I don't remember the origin because didn't Amy get pregnant at the end of, was it the beginning of 6 or end of 5?
It was the end of 5. It was the prom
Right.
episode.
So that was foreshadowing my pregnancy, apparently. So yeah, it just was, and sometimes stuff is in the air. It is funny how I don't think they had people pregnant on that series for 7 years, and then we were all pregnant at the same time. But I do remember going to birthing classes, and I'm pretty sure that was why I was on that episode. And I heard you guys talking a little bit about Eric showing up at those classes, and it's just such a natural that he would go and be funny and doing that. And then you were asking about the motorcycle. I don't remember the exact origin of how that became the motorcycle, but I do think that I think men worrying about being older fathers and that whole sports thing he was worried about within, I think felt real, felt genuine, and I'm sure it came also from some of the fathers of the room. So yeah, I think those are real issues, and I just recently watched that myself, and I was very touched the way that Eric talked to him and helped him work through it, and that wasn't the biggest part of being a father, was whether he could throw a ball with him. But I also thought, oh my God, he's 43. You're not that old. Come on.
That's what we said. I mean, like, we're in our late 30s at this point in time. We were like, oh, 43 is midlife crisis territory? Like,
yeah, so, but I was younger when I wrote it too. So you think, oh my God, he's older. But, I think anytime too, when you're 40 and up having kids, you start thinking, okay, how am I? So I'm going to be in my 60s when they're in college. And you start thinking about that sort of thing and going through all of that. So, it hit a chord there. Should he have been out shopping for a motorcycle during birth class? No. Great timing. That's all very sitcom, the times they pick fights and make choices like that, it works for comedy, but it's not exactly real. But yeah, it was fun. And I think addressed the way he might have felt during that situation.
You talked about rewatching your episodes in preparation for this. Was there anything else that kind of popped out at you as like, wow, why did we do that? That was kind of weird, or wow, that was a really good decision. I stand by that. Anything that kind of stands out?
Okay, two things. One, I remember with listening to Pod Meets World, they kept saying, oh, we're going to get to the bear one day. We're going to get to the bear one day. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember there was a bear. It was in an episode. I don't remember which episode. And I remember thinking like, wow, that was a little broad. And then I was horrified to find out, yes, it was my episode that had the bear in it. I'd completely forgotten. I do remember a weird thing that they told us no one in their period could go on the set when the bear was working, which is just, I just remember hearing that and thinking, wow, that was weird. And what a weird thing to raise your hand and say, I'm not going to rehearsal this week. Or I do remember I did not pitch the bear. I was a mid-level writer. Big expensive decisions like bears don't come from mid-level writers. Prank Wars probably comes from writers, but decisions like that come higher up. And it was fun. You break all kind of rules in the 7th season. Just stuff gets bigger and bigger and broader, and certainly that was a surprise no one saw coming. And that I also remember Danielle complaining on the podcast about having honey in her hair, and when I saw that, because I just watched that episode, I was like, oh no, she's gonna be mad at me about that. I had no memory whatsoever that I had done that. But topping that, there was some level of prank war I bought. I don't know where they got the bear. Whatever. The one that blew me away, and I do remember at the time I didn't understand it either, but I couldn't fight it, is the organ grinder and the little monkey named Eric.
Yes.
Oh,
we had strong feelings about that as well.
I don't think I probably wouldn't listen to it because I would just be so. First off, I probably a grounded idea of like, Matthew Lawrence and Will working in the union. Do they both have styles they could learn from? Whatever. There feels like some groundedness to that, although I think it went pretty broad as well. William Daniels was in the episode. I adore William Daniels. I was a huge fan, and I used to watch Elsewhere when I was a kid and thought he was terrific. And I noticed he wasn't in either of my season 6 episodes, so I was glad to see him in this. But I remember at some point, and it was not me, someone pitched organ grinder. And I did not know what an organ grinder was. And I'm a quarter Italian. And this was pre pull your phone out and Google it. And I remember and they're like, with the monkey. And I'm like, wait, like, is that like on a Bugs Bunny episode where you see, like, I just didn't know what it was. But was like, okay, that's the pitch. I'll put an organ grinder in and here's what we're going to do. And I saw the way it was played completely as if he was scamming him, though. There was no ambiguity to his performance, even though he wasn't scamming him. Also, was he not dressed like he just stepped out of a Shakespearean play? Like,
Absolutely.
What was with the peasant outfit?
He stepped
and
from a time machine.
he's standing in the bank where everyone else is in, and there's no explanation for it.
Nope.
And he's got to send for Eric's little girlfriend.
I've never felt more justified, by the way, hearing your reaction, because these were complaints I had to Ceej when we watched it, and I'm so glad that you feel the same way.
And it's season 7, so right, it wasn't 6, that was 7.
No, it's 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you I was throwing it up an awful lot in season 6, because I had a lot of morning sickness. I can't explain it for 7, except I will tell you I didn't know what an organ grinder was myself. I certainly didn't know he would be dressed like he stepped off a Shakespearean stage. I found it bizarre, the overall theme I like, but also, I'm sorry, who's managing that union?
That's what we said.
You can't just give away money. Like, we didn't take $200 out of my pocket and let me give you $200, buddy. I'm sorry, you're having a hard day. Like $1,700, and then Matthew Lawrence makes the exact same mistake later to a bank where.
No, I love that you're saying all of these things because A, we feel justified, but B, anytime you want to come and join us in the critique, because you have the exact same observations that we have. But I think one of the things that I'm hearing from you is there seems to be a difference in like the writing room in season 6 and the writing room in season 7. What do you think was like the difference? Because you keep going, this was season 7 as opposed to season 6.
Well, certainly the older a show gets, generally the broader a show gets. And some of that is characters almost become caricatures of themselves, right? Because jokes they did at one point, just a smile, a look, a hey, turns into hilariousness from the audience. I just watched the new season 1 episode of Hacks came out.
Oh yeah.
And I was, which I just adore that show for so many reasons. But it's interesting. I was watching it with my daughter and my husband, and Jean Smart went out to test the material in a club, and she just starts saying a couple things. So I took my corgi out for a walk, and the audience just, and they're just laughing. And she's like, no, that's not the joke. And then they go, and at some point, certain celebrity, they will laugh at anything you do. And so, of course, I knew exactly where they were going with this show, and I'm a really annoying person to watch television with because I'm boring my husband and daughter with examples from life and how appropriate this story is. But it because they walk out, and it happens on all shows, Seinfeld, whatever. Kramer walks in the room, people laugh hysterically. It's not that funny, and I think he walks bigger and bigger into a room physically to justify the laugh that is completely unjustified, because you just don't laugh when a person walks in a room. So I think that's part of it. And I think you start to have a little more fun with the show and go crazy and just like, let's blow it out. I would imagine that's the decision of the bear. I can't imagine how. And there was no, as if, and a car was in the apartment. It was a funny bit. There's no attempt to really explain it because, as we know, Cory and Shawn, not exactly mechanics, engineering guys. So that makes no sense whatsoever. So I can sort of look over some of that when you find some meat to the conflict in it and go, we're just having fun in the 7th year. Also, I don't know if it's how much difference it made, but I believe it was season 6 that Michael Jacobs was not in the room as much, and Bob Tischler was at the computer operating head writer and showrunner for a bit of it because Michael had another show, which is not a judgment on Michael or whatever. It's just the way it had a little bit of a shift. I think Bob's tone was a little bit different. when I went back and watched the 2 6s, I didn't see as much of a lesson into those as much as we had some conflict and fun. And it even with the broadness of the two I did in 7, it came back in with a message. Or at least Feeney came in with a message, and that I think the message feels very Michael's voice sometimes. So that might have been part of it. But the actors, and it's no fault of their own, they get so well known, so loved, so adored by the crowd that they just walk in and go like this, and people are laughing hysterically. And so it also becomes harder for the writers because you don't, just like the character in Hacks was out trying to go to a new club to get a real response. It's very hard to get a real response in later seasons because that audience is out there and they're loving everything you do. And you go, oh, is that joke too broad, too small? And even if the actor ad-libs something super broad that you're like, I think we need to pull that down, they're like, no, are you kidding? They loved it. And you can't argue that because the crowd's just going crazy. So that's part of, I think, why the tones get broader with time.
That's such a like an interesting observation, and just I've never correlated it to that before of how fanfare would affect writing, but you've painted that picture so beautifully that now I'm going to see it with every sitcom I watch, I think, from now on.
Well, certainly with multicams. I mean, it is a real thing with multicams because we really need that audience response. The actors need it. It helps them with their rhythm, their delivery, the speed. You'll even probably have shorter page counts in later seasons because your laugh breaks are longer. And that's not, going in and over, throwing in the laughs. That's just real. That's just the way it works. And that affects the actors' rhythms, and it affects what they do. And it gets to the point where, you can start believing that you're funny doing anything. And honestly, look, Will Friedle, Eric, I mean, he could have read the phone book. We were just, and how do you decide what's too big for Eric? Because literally he could read the phone book and we would laugh. So it's, those boundaries start to grow and grow with time.
That's so funny that you say that because we very often talk about the fact that part of the show, I think it was Gary who said it, Gary Miller, who we spoke to, who was like, part of it is we got into the trap of it would be like, Will does something funny, like it just, they knew that he could make anything funny, and that kind of became his Achilles heel in a way, because even though everyone loved the work that he did, he just became funny guy because we knew that they could put him in a scene and he would make it funnier to the audience.
His commitment was amazing. I mean, his performances are great, but I looked myself, I was watching, I don't know which one of the ones it was, but he was trying to open a can like it was a jar. And the commitment was unbelievable. And it was funny. But even I'm watching, like, we couldn't have given him, I don't know, a jar he was trying to open with a can opener. Like, could we have not tried something to not make him, the intelligence of a 4-year-old? I don't even think a 4-year-old would do that. So, but he commits and he goes for it. And I think the audience at that time is like just wanting to see Will be funny. Or maybe they're irritated about it. I don't know at the time.
I think but this is the most validating interview we've ever had, by the way, because you're saying everything you've been talking about.
Or that you're talking to both audiences, because Tony is like, what? Like, what is the mental level of Eric even supposed to be? And then I'll be like, I'm not gonna lie, I found it funny. And or we go back and forth in that whole thing of like asking a question of like, why is Eric have the mentality of a 4-year-old? And then being like, but Will's performance is able to pull it off. And so we understand the kind of push and pull that the writers must have.
He commits unbelievably. I don't want to be judgmental and say it's lazy, but I'll say it's a little lazy as well. Like, I don't know, we could try it a little harder on some of that. And I don't remember too, again, it was so long ago. Was that even in the original script? I don't know. Was it some business that a director found standing there to start the scene and we all walked down and went, that's hysterical. He's trying to open a can. I mean, so I can't even remember this long ago where it came from. And sometimes something's more realistic, and then it, you go down in multicams and you see rehearsals all week. And you may have a great joke that kills at the table on Monday. It's good at the rehearsal on Tuesday. Wednesday, we've laughed at it 3 days in a row, and maybe the actor's a little bored at the rehearsal and no one laughs. And then like Thursday, we've got to, punch up that joke. When actually the joke was fine, we're just a little bored with it. And so someone takes a joke with a punchline and they make it huge. And then Thursday, it's a surprise because we didn't think they were going to do that. And we all laugh uproariously. And now that's the new joke. And we've broadened it maybe more than it needed to be. And again, that's just part of the process. And I think first season laughs are different from later season laughs. As actors find their roles in it, as writers we get a more true read in earlier seasons because you either laugh or you don't. Like that's working or it's not working. So again, that goes back to the same thing. It's just part of this evolution of the show and of the process.
I have a question. You like a lot of the episodes that we talked about, you are so good at bringing these characters who are a little behind the scenes or like don't get as much screen time and bringing them to the forefront. Like we said, you're one of the very few episodes where they acknowledge and talk about what it was like for Amy to be pregnant. Also, you have You Light Up My Union, which really centers Jack in a way that we don't really get to see Jack get his Feeny moment if not for you. And then both episodes have Rachel centered in a way that we constantly talk about the fact that Rachel is never given her due, but it is because of the episodes that you wrote that Rachel is even given like the conflict and the centering that she does. So was that intentional again from your side, or did you kind of look and see, were you like given the assignment and then was like, how can I bring these characters into this world?
It's hard to remember the exact origin of stories. Again, I always try to find the nugget of truth that is something I'm pitching and it works. Everybody pitches areas and then stories are assigned to people. Sometimes it's because it was your original nugget. Sometimes it was someone else's. I do think there was an effort in season 6 to sort of friends up the show in terms of aging them up a little bit, having their apartments, having their relationships a little more in that sort of 20s sort of tone. And I enjoyed that. And I thought Maitland Ward was terrific. I enjoyed writing for her. I noticed that myself when I went and watched them. I'm like, wow, I had 2 sort of important episodes for her. And I tried to, who knows what you guys said about this, but I tried in my mind to understand what was going on there. I mean, she is a beautiful, attractive woman. And she seemed to be not allowed, and I don't think this is super upfront in the episode, but she wasn't allowed the boundaries of other women. And I felt terrible about that watching it. And I like that she stood up for herself, but the idea that, like when, not that 2 young guys, I don't know, would Matt LeBlanc or would Chandler and Joey have gone in and read someone's diary? Well, if it showed up, they might have. Would they have admitted it? Like there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. We were here. We could. I doubt it. And I was sort of thinking, I could see Cory saying that, but I had a hard time seeing Ryder see nothing wrong with that. Like I'm like, whoa, you are really crossing a boundary here. And I think he would not accept that with Topanga. So it was like she had less. She was coupled some, but she had less rights. And I think because she was sexy, she had less, she had literally less rights and boundaries. And I didn't like that. I liked her standing up for it. And interesting, we were, there was no Instagram and sending, sexy pictures back and forth and all of that kind of thing back in this day. But sort of that was pseudo sexy, the one that was in the war, I think, on the wall. That was a private pic that she had given to Matthew Lawrence. In a way, that's going on today, right? The boyfriend pics in high school that then gets shared with someone else that shouldn't. Like, so all that, in a way, felt real. Was that a sexy enough picture? I don't know. And that, again, wouldn't have been a decision of mine. But it was a violation of her trust and her boundaries, and she didn't get the same respect as Angela or Topanga. And I thought that was interesting when I went back and watched it. So, and I like her standing up for that and saying, I'm not, but what shocked me is that they didn't realize it. Yeah, I again, but it's sort of like, the Cory and Shawn machine had become so powerful later that they really were entitled to do anything they wanted to because we're cute and we're funny and look, and and so they could get away with it. So, good for her for calling them on it. Um,
This is
and
so
I'm saying,
refreshing to hear, by the way, because we're constantly talking about how no one's calling out Cory or Shawn for stepping over boundaries. And like this episode really is the one that I think probably holds them the most accountable, more so than any other one that we've seen.
as they should be. And I don't know whether it was a violation in the writing that they should have acted that way. The fact that they didn't even conceal that they read her diary, is that they didn't feel the least bit of guilt about it, is just, again, I don't know how I felt about it 20 years ago, but watching it now, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, even Shawn doesn't realize, deep Shawn journaling, poetic Shawn didn't think that was a bad thing. Like, no, we're just two entitled guys. Our girlfriends live here. We can do anything, and you're just the hot girl, so you have no rights whatsoever. And I didn't like that at all. But then it got fairly conflict serious at the end, and I don't even know how it ends because it was a two-parter, and I didn't download the second one.
Well, no, it's funny to those of you who are like just listening and not watching. You don't see like Tony and I like squirming in our chairs. You are saying so many things that we absolutely point out. The reason why I brought it up is because we felt like Maitland and so Rachel weren't given the respect that they deserved as an actor or characters, and this idea that the show was arguing at the time that it was completely okay to just like cross Rachel's boundaries. And the idea that in the episodes that we're referring to, specifically in War, and even like in the Truth About Honesty, the dinner party one, Rachel stands up for herself and she's like, no, I am more than this thing on a pedestal. I am a real person and I deserve to be treated as such. We loved those parts of those episodes. So we wanted to definitely give you the credit for being the voice of Rachel when in a show that very often she is only seen as the hot girl roommate.
I really resonate with what you're saying, and as I watched, I liked Rachel. I like her story, and I like her standing up for herself. And we can all identify a little bit with the friends that have known each other forever, and they have an inside language, and they have inside, like, they know their boundaries, where you can cross, where not, and what they can get away with, and what they think is cute because they're just cute. And that outsider who's a member but not really,
Yeah.
and has to stand up. And then, what do they tell her? Well, look, we've only known you a couple of years, and that's interesting. I also think stuff like that plays out um, in casts that have known each other for a long time, right? And then someone comes in only 2 years. And look, I was in a room with people that have been there the whole time. I was only there the last 2 years. So there's some bonds I have, there's some bonds that I didn't have. So maybe that's a little bit reflected in sort of just exploring those relationships. But I do remember liking writing for Maitland, and I thought that character was fun. I loved her trying to have a dinner party. I felt like that was something I tried to do in my 20s a lot. You're just trying to be grown up, and but it's sort of a Mary Tyler Moore party, to make a very old reference. It just didn't work, even though her intentions were so good. So yeah, I loved her. I thought she was, and I think her performances are really terrific. She feels very grounded, and in a in a way that's slightly different from the rest of the cast. I think because we do know her less, so um, it feels a little. I don't quite know how to explain it, but she almost feels on it like on her own level, because again, she doesn't have the I walk in the room and say hello and everyone bursts out laughing. So I think she has to stand a little taller and deliver a little more to just stand on an equal par with them, which I think fits story wise and probably fits acting wise.
And the episodes you've written, you know, we've kind of discussed how you've done such a great job of advocating for the female characters and giving them a voice. For those episodes that you didn't write and you were just in the writer's room, did you ever find it a struggle to advocate for some female characters? You know, it's kind of a boys' club in the writer's room. Did that ever become something that interfered with where you thought the character should go story-wise, or what you thought maybe dialogue should be written for them or anything like that?
Boy Meets World was definitely a show written from a male point of view. The star is a male. The females are surround the males. It is more about the dad's point of view than the mom's point of view. And I think you learn all the upper level. And by the way, there were a lot of women in the room, 6 and 7. So there were one, two, three, four women in the room.
Wow.
5 women in the room. 5 women in the room out of 11. So that's a lot of women. One is a team, so in a way they script-wise they count as one, but that's a lot. But I believe I was the highest ranking woman. Yeah, I was in the room, and I was at producer, and above me there was consulting producers, supervising producers, co-exec producers, multiple co-exec producers, and exec producers. So I'm mid-level, and the other females in the room are lower levels. We don't have a final say. It's not to say if I said absolutely this is wrong, you've got to do it, that it wouldn't be heard. But that wasn't the lens the show was done. And I think who knows whether I came in and I said, I've got a fantastic story for Amy. Let's really explore what it's like to be 40 years old, having a baby, not sure, whatever, what dreams she had going on before, I'm pretty sure I would have known going in, if we're all going to sit around and pitch 3 ideas, that was not going to be the one picked up. So you learned, I mean, look, you learn your audience, and I knew who I was pitching to. I would be shocked that if I wasn't in there saying, guys, are we really going to say it's okay they can read her diary? But I don't have a time capsule to remember how much I fought for what, but I'm not surprised at all that it's one of my episodes I went that she goes, well, maybe I should have gone to Yale.
God, yeah.
So maybe, and again, I don't want to take credit specifically for lines in a way, because multicam comedies are collaborative. It's a collaborative beast, and you're taught at a very young writing age, whatever your physical age is. When you turn that draft in, it belongs to the staff, and we go page by page on every script, and we punch up when we write. Sometimes a lot of your draft stays, sometimes none of your draft stays. Sometimes there's weird reasons come in. They had an actor in the previous week that they loved that killed. Let's take their story and move it up to the next episode or something. And so we're going to strip your B story and put it in the next one, or there's all kind of reasons that things are redone. And so it's collaborative. It's interesting. Listening to some of the earlier Pod Meets World cast about people saying I was the voice of Shawn, or I was the voice of this character, or whatever. I didn't feel like that was necessarily a complete, with the exception of Michael Jacobs and Cory. I didn't know that was necessarily the way I felt about rooms in the season 6 and 7. But maybe that's because I'm part of a younger writer at the time. We're brainwashed. We all do the same thing. And also, it absolves you a little bit from responsibility. If you don't know what an organ grinder is and it's a principal part in your episode, you know what? We do it all together, and we live and die together, and there you go.
No, I love that. And yeah, we've spoken to quite a few of the writers who were in the writers' room. And it is interesting because they all say, and I will want to make sure that we give credit where credit's due, including with you. They all say it was very collaborative. Everyone, had little bits. Maybe someone pitched something and someone else tweaked the line. So we love that. Like, there does seem to be a lot of respect for individuals in the writer's room and how you were able to collaborate and work together on storylines. Like, looking at the history of the television that you've both written before and since Boy Meets World, is you were on like Two Guys in a Pizza Shop. You did Awkward, and also, now that I think about it, you even did Reba, which all of those shows have this kind of love triangle, or this 3 individuals who have to deal with the reality of whatever the other 2 points are. And I was wondering, based on that, in the movie right now that's really popular, Challengers, is like a really big, like
Oh
threesome
yeah.
triangle movie. Do you think that the Jack, Eric, and Rachel of it all could have been written differently if we were done now, or if it was done now?
Oh, interesting. I mean, I don't know. The boundaries are all blurring. If I wrote it differently now, I would then still have it blow up because I don't know that I believe that that works.
Ooh,
But
love it.
yeah, I mean, I think we can all talk about, and that's, I'm sure some of that's age too, about we can set various boundaries and make it work in here. But again, I'm all about pushing the boundaries and people thinking they've set the boundaries, but it's going to work and not. And so if I would have done that, I would have done it and then blown it all up, I'm sure. I haven't seen Challengers, but I'm looking forward to it. And I do like complexity, and it's not, relationships aren't black and white. So that is something that I would definitely want to play with, and how we all think it's going to work and then how it really works out when it comes down to it.
So since we've opened the floodgates to talk about Reba, can we ask some Reba questions now?
Sure.
I
I'll
would
let
say,
Ceej start because I know he's so
okay,
excited.
yeah. I'd like to. First of all, my husband was like, "Oh, you just did your entire Reba rewatch recently." I was like, "I did," so this is so exciting. And I was like, first of all, I was like, "Do you know how much Black people love Reba? Like
So much.
a single mom who works too hard, who loves her kids and never stops. Like that is a meme like on Black Twitter constantly. And how does it feel to like write a show that is so iconic and like is able to just cross boundaries and genres and communities?"
I love it. I love it. And I get sent a lot of stuff on, I have a hard time calling it X, but yeah, Black Twitter, Black X, that really sounds crazy. Um, but I have people that, I found the show in a dark time in my life and it made me happy or this or whatever. And I absolutely love it. It's so great. It's a privilege to be able to tell stories that touch people on any level. And I don't, I don't take that lightly at all. It's wonderful. I have been it's interesting. I listened in a little bit of prep for this to Erica Montalvo, and I think she's got a new last name with that, but her episode with you guys and her talking about segregated comedy. And I thought that was sort of interesting, the mention of it, and I was trying to think about why that is, and it's, well, some of it is simply because many multicams are about families, and the family might be a white family or a Black family, and that is a segregation, but it's not necessarily, out of, I can't enjoy watching a Black family on television. There's a million great shows about Black families that I love to watch. And whether it's my personal experience or whatever, it's great, as moms, dads, and families in conflict. And I love to hear that with Reba. And I love you guys going over the Boy Meets World podcast and or broadcast and talking about it. And I have had I was recently, a project I did for Warner Brothers, an open writing assignment that it's two Black producers that have a pod deal there that had a project that they wanted written, and the first thing they started with was how much they loved Reba, and it was just wonderful to hear. um, Looking back, I wish the show was more diverse than it was. But there's also false ways to do that. I mean, you look back at what were the mixed shows, like, a Different Strokes or things like that, the ways they mixed families. So that's not exactly an organic way to do it. But yeah, I love that. I hope families speak. I love that you can sing the theme song. And yeah, that's great. I love that it speaks to people. That's always that's what you're trying to do, cross boundaries and speak to people.
We talked about how you've written on so many shows before you got to Reba. This is the first show that you created. Is that correct?
Yes. So as I mentioned, I was pregnant in season 6. Let me say that again. I was pregnant in season 6. And then I had my daughter on March 31st and went back to work, I think, at 10 or 11 weeks back to Boy Meets World. I had the they called it the pumpin' style briefcase.
Yeah.
I had to go to the my office and pump. Um, and I was getting up at 2 and 4 in the morning and then working all day. It was a pretty crazy time period. And when the fall came and we were shooting, I was talking to my agent about, it looks like 7's going to be it. So we're going to be looking for a job next year. And he said, well, you need to write me something. And at that time, a lot of times people were just writing an episode of whatever their favorite show was. But I had quite a few of those sitting around. And I was on my sofa breastfeeding my child, believe it or not, at like 4 in the morning, September, October, whatever, on season 7. And I had this idea about this family and the pregnancies that just tore their life upside down. And I wrote it. Actually, I just came up with the idea and I sent it to my agent, and he goes, I like that. And he said, go ahead and write the first scene and then outline the rest. So I wrote the first scene and I outlined the rest. And meanwhile, working full time, how many hours a week? A lot. And I had about an hour commute home. And so then I sent it to him and he said, okay, just spec the whole thing. Okay. So I spec the whole thing and I got it to him around Christmas time. And I remember his very unenthusiastic, when I sent it to him, he's like, okay, yeah, I read it. I'll see what I can do. Click. Okay. And within a couple of weeks, we had multiple studios bidding on it, and Fox ended up buying it. And it was a very unreal dream situation. And not the way it usually happens. And then we spent, I went on an overall deal, and it was on Two Guys and a Girl that year while we were casting it and get it set up, and it shot the next year. And so, yeah, it was a very unusual situation. And I think a lot of times women pregnant and having kids are worried that they're not going to have time for other creative pursuits, or it might, all of their creative juices are just going to be dried up because they're so busy and tired. And as it turned out to be a very creative time for me. But yeah, a crazy way to do it. And I've sold, oh gosh, I've sold probably 10 other pilots and done some other stuff. It's never been off a spec pilot. That's not that common. But I've also said, I don't know that you could have sold Reba in a pitch, because someone would have said, let's cut the teenage pregnancy. I don't think that's going to play. Why do we need the other pregnancy? Well, let's do this. I think it would have been developed to death. And I think I had a vision in my head and a voice in my head. And I thought if I could get that on paper, people could sort of see it. And so my agent really was very smart in telling me to go ahead and spec it, because it very likely would never have sold in a straight pitch form.
It's so funny that you say that. I have 2 questions based off of what you just said. One is, was Reba McEntire who you had in mind, or did she get attached to it after you had written it? And then the second question is that what you pointed out about the show that I thought was so fantastic is you wrote 3 women who ended up being mothers, I'll say, and being able to be such strong characters between Barbara Jean, Cheyenne, and Reba. Each one is a mother who is able to figure out what her second act will be after this unexpected pregnancy. And I think that a lot of households I grew up in could relate to that. Not only, oh, there's a pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy that I have to deal with and figure out what this means for my life and my life goals, but also setting it in Texas and the South, and just that dichotomy of oh, it's one thing to have this story in a very liberal area, but if you're doing it in Texas, that has a whole other layer of expectations and community. And so yeah, that's to me what I think makes the show special. And I guess at this point in time, I realized it was less than a question and more of a statement.
Well, that was very intentional to set it in Texas. I grew up in Houston, and to have this was not I don't know, a teen on the fringe. I mean, she's on the cheer and not the cheer team. She's on the drill team. Like
Yep.
he's a star player. I wanted to put all of these they're a religious family. Barbara Jean is so religious. And yeah, I wanted to put all of it in there and say, yeah, and guess what? Let's don't pretend teens aren't having sex. Let's don't pretend, everything's perfect in a marriage and whatever, and just mix it all up. And it was always a show about what happens plan B. Life is blown up. And for me, the pilot, as the scene I had early on always in my head was, Cheyenne saying, I'm off the drill team, and, Reba, I'm off out of the junior league. And then Reba having that realization, Cheyenne says, I guess your life's ruined too. And that idea, my folks divorced, and I who knows what I would say if my mom was still alive, but my parents have now both passed. I don't think after my folks divorced that my mom was like, you know what, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be great. We're going to be fine. We're going to rebuild. We're going to find a way. And I think that's what I wanted my mom to say. And so when Reba hears her child say, oh, she thinks her life's ruined. She's 16 years old. We can't, or 17 years old. We can't have her life be ruined. So we're going to have to find a new way, plot a new course, and just figure out. And I think, so much of television is about idealized families. And, life is about the plan Bs, because it just doesn't go like you thought for so many reasons. Everybody's having to find a plan B, and you can either be pissed off, and it's fine to be pissed off for a little while, but then you got to find a plan B and live your life, and also realize everybody's living plan B. And so that was the heart of the core concept that I resonated to, that really then the show was sort of built around. And in terms of was it written for Reba, I actually wrote it this seminal night. Sally Field guest starred on a Murphy Brown episode, and it's like a Nickelodeon. It's 4:00 in the morning, and I had this idea of Sally Field as the lead, so I called it Sally. The spec was called Sally, and it sold as Sally. And in fact, we sent it to Sally Field, and she was looking to direct at the time. And apparently the comment she had was, weird, it's like it was written for me. And I was like, it was. But she ended up passing, and we opened up to casting, and Reba McEntire came in. Her manager found it and said Reba had been looking for something. So the manager found it, and Reba came in and auditioned for us sometime around Thanksgiving in 2001? No, 2000. No, 2000. Anyway, sorry, as if that really matters. That's important to the podcast. Anyway, she came in and auditioned, and I just felt like she had charisma, and she certainly understood the South, and you can't take your eyes off of her. And I'm like, okay, the WB didn't have a tremendous following in comedy at the time, so let's bring someone that's going to bring a big audience in with her. And she, did a great job with the audition, just knocked it out of the park, and long may she run.
So do you have another?
Oh, my main question was kind of figuring out what Reba kind of thought about your vision. Like, was she on board right away? Was it something you had to explain to her? Did she get it right away? In terms of, having these stories about plan Bs, having like teenage pregnancy on the show, was that something that she was able to understand?
She did. She really got it. The audition scene that we did was the her and Cheyenne scene that I was just talking about. And she absolutely got it. And she had a very strong, I insisted that there was a line about that she had talked over their options. I am pro-choice, and I felt like that was something that needed to be done. Did they rush the wedding, and is it all a bit hyper, whatever? Yes, I copped to that. But I did want that in there, and she was fine with that. But we had some discussions early on that whether I think it's smart of them to do this, and I think it's hard and probably a mistake, but if this is what they want to do, I'm going to support it. But she always said, I'm going to love this child because it's my grandchild. Because there was a big there was always some conflict about, are we making it too easy for them and or hard enough or whatever. But Reba's like, it's my grandchild and I'm going to love it and it's my child. And so, she had a very clear vision of that, which probably really helped a lot of the difficult issues about this. And we did have some issues. There was one actor, I won't say his name, but that came in for Brock, of which Chris Rich was magnificent. But he came in, and when he asked me about the line that she discussed all their options, and he asked what that meant, and I told him what it meant in my mind and my heart, and he said he wouldn't do the role. So, because he didn't believe in that, and I respect that. You got to, you be you. But yeah, but she got it, and she was just terrific in that scene, and she understood that moment. And country, one of the writers that came in and interviewed, he's like, this whole show is a country song. I'm like, you were kind of right. So the pilot's got a lot of up, down, and tragedy and whatever, and it's very much like a good country melody. So yeah.
Perfectly said. The theme song paints that like the theme song in and of itself really sells the show, and it is kind of like the log line of the show in a way.
And she did it for the show. Like she came in and said this should be the theme. Like, absolutely.
Oh, that's so great. You talked a lot about casting, and I was like, you have worked with some really great names who have gone on like practically the entire cast of Reba. Bo Murkoff, Melissa Peterman, Steve Howie. You've worked with Ryan Reynolds. How does it feel to like work with all these people and like see them go on? Like, do you think that you have the eye for casting? Where is it like a matter of luck? Like, what do you think it is?
Greg Orson was our casting director for Reba, and I want to give him full credit for being absolutely terrific. And in fact, we had the van role was one of the hardest roles to do. It really, and we brought in different people. I mean, we had a guy that was very close to getting it, that had a very surfer mentality. And I kept thinking I need to rewrite it. I don't know why, but we couldn't make it. It just wasn't singing. And I remember Greg calling and saying, oh my goodness, I've got someone you need to see. I'm going to bring him in at 2:00 or whatever, something like that. And he came in, and Steve read, and we're like, oh yes, that's it. We have him. No, I've been super lucky to, Ryan Reynolds. I mean, again, so talented, so funny. And Nathan Fillion was on that show as well. A terrific actor who's done a lot of magnificent things. And my very first television job, it was Parenthood. There was a series Parenthood before the later Parenthood. It was on NBC. It was a single camera. It was put between two multi-cams on like a Saturday night, and no one knew what a single cam comedy was at that time. It was too bad. But one of the cast members, a guy named, you might have heard of him, Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah, exactly. You have such a good luck with casting.
He was on that show. It was so crazy. It was super talented cast. I've had a chance to work with some great people, and good showrunners allow you to go in on the casting of your episodes, which is not something every showrunner will do. Michael was very good about that, and it's really helpful to go in and sit in sessions and see the process, hear people, find people that bring something to it, that say it the way you didn't hear it in your head, but it's better, or just the different processes. Melissa Peterman, again, I credit Greg with bringing her in. She wasn't the exact vision that we had. She was hysterical. She, in her audition, ad-libbed a ton of stuff. And it was super funny and had us crying. But I wanted to make sure when we went into network, because they had loved the show and they bought it outright. The WB bought it with a put offer guaranteeing they would make it. And I wanted to make sure that they heard from her that she could deliver those jokes and then have, some of her ad libs. So I called her and talked to her, and I'm like, we cut it down by a third, and she went in and killed it. And they too was like, it's not what I originally thought, but my gosh, she's fantastic. And so, super happy to see, so many talented people that I got to work with and that have gone on and had big careers. And Yeah, it's super fun. I wish, we didn't have Instagram down in the day, so I wish I had like, Leo and I on the set and all these things. Like everybody today, whoever they work with, they post all the time, and we didn't have that back in the day when the phones didn't even have cameras on them. But yeah, yeah. No, I've been lucky. I've worked with some really talented people. Linda Cardellini did 4 episodes on a boy, and boy, she's I love her. Oh
Yeah,
my God, Dead to Me is just fantastic.
yeah,
Love
she's
it.
great. As we wrap up with you, Allison, what would you like our listeners to walk away with knowing about, your time in the industry and in television? If there's like aspiring writers who want to get into the industry, is there any tips or tricks you would want to share with them?
Um, I'll share with you a mistake I made that maybe I can help someone avoid. So when I first came out here, I got jobs as assistants, and I made a lot of coffee. I typed a lot of scripts. I got showrunners' cars washed. I did a lot of things like that. And I was writing specs on weekends, and I eventually got kind of a junior agent at a small agency to take me on. And she was sending my stuff out, and I was really excited about it. And at some point, she said I was going to go get to meet the senior agent that owned the agency. And I was super excited. So I plotted it out. My phones would be covered so I could leave my day job. And I was newly out from Texas. I'd been here, a year and a half, maybe. And I put on a dress and a suit jacket and went to this lunch and mentioned my master's degree from the University of Texas. And I discussed the discourse and the critique of the current state of television and the intrusion of cable. And, I just tried to sound so so smart and intelligent with incredible opinions about all the material and whatever. And I thought it went terrific. I went back to my office, and the junior agent called me, and I said, well, like, what the big person say? And she said, you're not very funny. And it was this light bulb that went out in my head. Oh, I'm not supposed to come out and try to be someone else, because I was trying to quell my Texas accent, which comes in and out. If you talk to me after 5, I generally start to drawl a little more, or if I've been talking to family. But I was trying to not be who I was, because I thought I needed to be a smart, professional businesswoman, executive to be hired. And what she's looking for is, give me a funny story to tell. Tell me about your car breaking down driving here from Texas. Tell me these other silly stories. Tell me about your crazy family, your stupid uncle, stuff like that makes you unique and interesting, and that's only a story only I can tell. And I generally tell funny stories. I come from a Southern family of storytellers, and we sit around at Thanksgiving. We tell the same ones every year, and they're still funny. My dad falling off the ski lift is funny one year as it is the next year. And that's part of that Southern tradition of storytelling. And that's what, when you go to meet a manager, a current executive, a studio person, someone at a pod, go be you. Tell your stories. Don't try to hide who you are or be who you think they're looking for. The more interesting you are, the better. Tell them a funny story that they can call a showrunner and say, oh, you're doing that show about dart throwing. Let me tell you, she threw one into the head. Whatever, some silly story that they can tell that makes you neat. Or, oh my God, you're not going to believe her. Or maybe they have nothing for you, but in 3 years, some story you told is now a script that they're doing. So if you want to write, also, all of life is material. I get people called in for jury duty and they want to get out. Go. There's a hit show right now about jury duty, and if you've never been on jury duty, you're not going to have much to say about it. If people like, oh, I got a chance to backpack through Europe, or I'm going to write 3 specs this summer. Like, go backpack through Europe. Like, go have all those unique, interesting experiences, and never apologize for who you are, what your background is, or what what makes you uniquely you, because that's what we need to fill rooms with, is people that don't all look the same, act the same, have the same education, and are trying to impress each other with how smart they are. So that's my biggest advice to people is, dive into who you are and mine that. Mine anything you write, even if it's for a show that's like a territory that doesn't feel like you, find that nugget that's you, that you like, that kernel, and put it in your script. And hopefully one day you have people calling those kernels back to you.
I love it. There's a phrase on TikTok right now called "Do it for the plot," where it really is like this idea of like, go live life, make the mistakes, do the weird thing, and do it for the plot. So you come back and you have stories to tell.
Exactly. The more stories you have to tell, the more unique your background, the more interesting you are to have in the room, and the more you have to write about. So, yeah.
All right, our final question will be, what's the last movie or television show that you fell in love with and that you wanted to recommend?
I mentioned Hacks earlier. I'm in love with Hacks. Absolutely, for so many levels. Also, because as a writer, I'm in love with Hacks. I can't wait for Handmaid's Tale to come back. It's so dark, but I never miss it. Oh God, it's so dark. I'm watching The Bear. Certainly, I don't understand Shogun, but I'm watching it. Succession, I refused to watch because I just thought I wasn't going to be interested in a bunch of rich white executives running networks. And then everyone said you had to watch it. And then I watched every dripping minute and loved every minute of it. And I'm watching every documentary about troubled teens sent off to horrible camps where they are, abused. And there's like a million of those documentaries right now that I've been watching. Yeah, sadly, that are absolutely terrible. So that's it. And I want more quick comedies on the air. I hope on the air and on the cable channels. I love comedy, and I think we need to laugh more right now. Oh, the world's a little dark. It's dark. We need some comedies. So anyway, I'm hoping maybe there'll be a resurgence of that after the strike. We'll see.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to promote, or anything that we should look out for?
I've got some television development that I'm going to a single camera I'm going out with this summer. But the crazier thing I'm doing, I went and judged a film festival last February, and I fell in love with two filmmakers that were just hilarious and had a twisted, crazy point of view. And I said, let's keep in touch because I love I love your style. And they sent me a teen comedy horror zombie movie this summer.
We're in.
And I love it. We did a few months of development together, and I am trying to get it made. We've got part of our funding. It's going to be a low budget. We've got the guy who's going to do our monsters. We've put together a team. It's nothing like anything I've done, and I'm having a ball with it. So, just got to keep stretching yourself, and it's fun. It'll be a movie I see like this because that's I'm not a big horror person, but I love the comedy elements in it. And I think maybe horror is an expression of the fact that a lot of people feel like the world is very scary right now. Yeah. And maybe that's why horror is having its day, or maybe because it's cheap. But if anyone wants to offer some funding, please look me up on Twitter. And so that's something I'm excited for. I'm hoping we're going to shoot that within the next 12 months.
Wow. Well, we'll look out for that. That seems like a genre that's right up our alley, so we can't wait for it. Thank you so much for coming. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you? You said you're on Twitter. Do you have a Twitter handle that maybe they can follow you at, or an Instagram or anything like that they can find you?
Yeah, it's Allie G, Aleeegee. But it's, if you look up Allison M Gibson, it's there. My Instagram's private, and
probably
do a lot of Clippers.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Oh yeah, I'm a Clippers huge fan. Yes, yes, I'm a fan and an apologist. Yes.
Allison, thank you so much. This has been such a thrill, and we look forward to speaking to you again.
Okay, great to meet you guys.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you an exclusive news announcement, introducing the Bromance World podcast Patreon. Over to you, Ceej.
That's right, Tony. When you join our Patreon as a Gold Star member, you get to dive into ad-free listening for just $3 a month. That's $3 a month to enjoy commercial-free listening to our latest episodes.
Now, Ceej, does this mean our listeners get to immerse themselves in bonus content, including extended episodes, exclusive Pod Meets World reviews, and our coverage of My Date with the President's Daughter?
That's right, Tony. And snag a sweet discount on our awesome Brum Meets World merchandise. And join the conversation to our Patreon polls. Unlock a world of exclusive content at patreon.com/Brum Meets World. Back to you, Tony.
Thanks, Ceej. By becoming a patron, you're not just supporting the show, you're getting VIP access to content you won't find anywhere else. For just $3 a month, enjoy the luxury of ad-free listening and join an exclusive club where the fun never stops. Back to you, Ceej.
Thanks, Tony. Don't miss out on the action. Join us at Patreon today and get you some Tony and Ceej time. Your support means the world to us. That's patreon.com/Brum Meets World. Back to you, Tony.
Elevate yourself from a basic listener to an official member of the Brum Meets World family. Now, back to the episode.
How amazing was that?
That was such a great interview and conversation. I feel like she validated every emotion,
Everyone.
critique, every feeling I ever had about Boy Meets World. She's like, no, you know what? You were right. And
Absolutely.
I'm smiling ear to ear. I'm so happy.
Absolutely. Like, it was so much fun to talk to her about the industry, about the writing process. I feel like we got to look into the writer's room in a way that we haven't before.
She talks about the differences, like there were some differences between season 6 and 7. Those are things that we've touched on, that we felt. She talked about like some things, comedy getting way too broad and like characters turning into caricatures. These are things we've been hinting at for basically the last season or two. So again, just I feel very validated.
Absolutely. We hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. It was so much fun. Tell us what questions we missed. Tell us what questions that you loved that we hit on. As she had pointed out, if you want to get in touch with Allison, go check out her. I think it's called
Twitter.
It's
Twitter. It's gonna say Twitter.
It's staying Twitter. Check out her Twitter at Allie G. That's ALEEGEE. She, like I said, she's very active up there. She's very much speaks a lot about the Clippers and the Rockets, and hopefully at this point in time she'll like answer your questions about Boy Meets World or Reba or Awkward, which she also wrote that we didn't get time to discuss. But yeah, an amazing history in television, an amazing person to just talk to, and I don't know, we're living our dreams, yo.
We're living our dreams. We're talking to so many people who like touched our lives in ways that they don't realize, which I think is the most like interesting thing talking to them, is that they just were doing their job that week. Like they don't know that they created something that like lives in our DNA. So
yeah, absolutely. So once again, guys, as we said previously, if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at brummeetsworld@gmail.com, or you can tag us on all of the social platforms at brummeetsworld. Check out our Patreon, check out our merch shop, check out Reba.
Check it all out.
I don't know if it's clear, but I like the show Reba. I don't know if I made that clear.
Also, Awkward is streaming on Paramount Plus, so check that out
again.
as well.
And if you guys love a little dirty threesome, we didn't really get to talk to her about like the differences between working for like a WB versus a Disney versus an MTV, because those are pretty different like audiences and studios, and I imagine you're allowed to get away with a lot more than you would now. But
yeah. All right, well, guys, be sure to reach out, and as always, be sure to dream,
to try,
and to do some damn good.
Do good. Later, Russ.
Later, Russ. This episode of Brum Meets World was produced by Ceej and edited by Tony Curtis. Brum Meets World is a 2 Free Tokens media production. Bye.
Bye.
When this boy meets world.
Join Jackie and Danielle, 2 best friends and ex-Blockbuster employees who are rewatching some of their favorite movies from the late 90s and early 2000s on the No More Late Fees podcast. And remember, be kind and rewind.